I think that this podcast is going to be very helpful for people to navigate two of the biggest pillars of our lives, which is love and finances, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage building something of significance, feeling purpose, but also how do you navigate life and marriage and love with your family, your kids, and all of that?
God has blessed us to a certain degree that we're able to do this. I'm already getting emotional.
Yeah, it's going to get real out here, guys. You're going to be seeing some tears. All right, welcome to episode number 1 of the Love and Cashflow podcast. I'm so excited to get this started, baby. Like, this has been a long time coming. I think that even the preparation and thinking about what we're going to talk about during these podcasts, and it's funny enough, like you and I started like vlogging back when vlogging was a thing.
Yeah.
You remember when we just got married?
Yeah.
We were doing YouTube videos.
Yep.
That was fun.
It was like, we were like 6 months in.
6 months into our marriage,
Yeah.
and we felt like we had something to say.
I know.
Which I feel like we did, though, because we did things so differently. And I guess people will start to uncover what that was during these episodes. So I'm excited for that for sure. But more than anything, also, I'm excited for people to finally hear your input in different things, because you're so like reserved and kind of like introverted. You don't like to give your opinion unless it's solicited, which is cool. But I feel like it's been a long time coming to make something happen where you could voice your feelings and your opinion about something.
I mean, I think what's not weird, but I would say like there's so many girls or women that message me, or even like friends or acquaintances that are like, how do you do this? Or like, oh my gosh, like you're so good, or I look up to you so much, or I look up to your marriage. And I'm like, wow. Like sometimes it makes me think like we don't have enough to share or to like voice to help others, even for both of us, because we've talked about this where like when someone approaches us when it comes to relationships or marriages, it's like a little like, ooh. Like, like it's like, oh, I love this topic, you know? And for both of us, right? I think that's the proof that there is something there, that we're passionate about it.
You mean because of the demand? People wanting to learn more and ask us for opinions, and you know.
I think people asking us proves that there is something that we carry.
Right.
You know, that they're seeing, and then our response and feeling that like fire ignite. It's like, okay,
we're
like,
meant to talk about this more.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I just feel like obviously we did start vlogging and we try to do this in a different way.
Yeah.
But with the whole editing the videos, and it was just so time consuming.
Right.
And now that podcast is such a big deal, and I think we can just talk.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it's also a way where we can talk, and how we talk, you know,
in bed, pillow talk. Yeah.
Share our thoughts. Hey, what do you think? And that way you're able to see a little bit more of our way of communication and the way that we process things. There is going to be a lot of things, I'm pretty sure, that a lot of you are not going to agree with. Right. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we have to
You're
be okay with that.
Because it's what we agreed upon as a couple, as parents of 2 little kids now. And it's what we feel based on our conviction, based on our beliefs, based on how we want to live.
Right.
You know, and whether you like it or not, that's just how it is, and it's not going to change.
Right.
You know, unless Jesus tells us something, you know, but.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that there's, you know, going back to us starting the YouTube channel back then, 6 months into our marriage, like I think it was good because it really allowed us to speak upon getting into that phase of getting engaged and married and prepping for all of that, which is cool. But I think that God's timing is so perfect because now we have 7 years of marriage under our belt, right? And obviously that didn't take off, even though to this day we still get people asking, hey, when are you going to start doing YouTube videos again? Because a lot of people got so much value from it, even though we were doing it from our phone, and it was like, you know, so many people, you know, handful of people, right? Not like we had hundreds of thousands of followers or even that 1,000 or whatever, but still that demand was there, and it carried through to this day. Yeah. But I do think that now, because God's timing is so perfect, we have much more to offer, because we can help people from the standpoint of
in different stages.
Yeah, different stages. Like we were going to have Chris, Luna, and Tessa on one of our episodes, which they just started dating like 3 months ago or something like that. I'm excited for people to see what that is and kind of like our input in that situation, which is
Yeah.
cool. But so many things that I'm excited about here as well, because we'll have conversations, you and I, like you said, but we'll also bring in guests
Right.
that are in different phases of love, different phases of cash flow, and find out how they navigate both together.
Yeah.
I think that this podcast is going to be very helpful for people to navigate two of the biggest pillars of our lives, which is love and finances, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you
Success.
success. How do you manage building something of significance, feeling purpose, right? Usually that caters into the cash flow side of things, right? But also, how do you navigate life and marriage and love with your family, your kids, and all of that? So I'm super stoked about this for sure.
Something that came to mind, sorry.
Yeah.
But like when we first started with the vlogging, we were still on the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Both of us. In that time period, you were trying, oh my God, like I want to say like 5 different businesses, not all at the same time, but like it was a, trial and error.
Yeah.
Tried, invested, we put our money. Some
we
worked,
had the vape wash, right? Remember the eco-friendly car wash? We had the clothing line as well. What else?
I don't remember, but just to show that
we've come a long way.
Those were the beginnings of, and like the sacrifices that we had to make then, and then look at us now. We have a successful business. We're in a more stable, very different state than what we were back then.
Right.
So those experiences just makes a huge difference on like, we can talk about that. We can share our advice. We can, let people know if you're in the beginning stages and you're in a relationship, how do you manage both? We've been able to see and figure out how can we both grow in the business and in our relationship and in our household, then the kids, then becoming parents and etc. So
and I don't want to make it seem like we have all of the answers either, because we really don't.
Not.
However, we do have some skin in the game where we've been doing this relationship thing we're going on 10 years together, not including, or is it 9?
It's going to be 9 boyfriend and girlfriend, but it's going to be 10 since we've known each other.
Yeah. So 9, let's call it 9 being in this relationship thing, like trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
So we have that, right? We've been in business now, a successful business for, 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of say, or I guess authority in each one of those things. So I think that's, awesome. So that when we do bring people on, we know what questions to ask and be able to maybe give some input to people that have some questions. And I'm excited to create this community where it's okay to talk about the balancing act of, the work-life balance or love and working, the dynamic between you and I.
It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, we're not always going to just talk about the good stuff, you know? And like, we can also talk about the uncomfortable stuff and people that I guess not much is talked about, whatever that is. Eventually it'll come up and we'll just share about it. But I think it's good also for people to know like where we come from. Yep. That we grew up different, in different family and households, like the
different upbringings. Yeah, for sure.
I'm an only child. Both of my parents had me at a very late age.
How old were they? Do you know? Do you remember?
My mom was in her late 30s and my dad was already in his 40s. So I want to say like almost mid 40s or mid 40s when I was born.
Yeah, so very late.
So very late. Granted, my dad turns 80 this year. So
crazy.
Yeah. So and then it was Christian based family. My dad was or is a preacher because he's in Colombia right now preaching, but very strict, very old mindset, very old school mentality. Obviously, I didn't have much growing up. Thank you.
Welcome.
Growing up as in like friends or siblings, that already, I guess, automatically made me introverted. My parents always told me that I was a very calm girl whenever we would go out or like go to visit someone's house, go to someone's house. I was just the very calm kid.
Very to yourself, reserved type thing.
Yes, but shy. I would say shy, but very loving parents. My dad till this day is very affectionate and very vocal with his words in affirming me, saying I love you, you look beautiful, like very detailed on that. What's it called? They both are Colombian, migrated here. They met in Miami, and then that's where I was born. And then my whole life just consisted in being in church. Once I became a teenager, I was more involved in church. I was more involved in like ministries and serving in church versus a sport in school. You know, towards the end of my high school is when I actually realized, hey, I should get into a sport.
Yeah.
So then that's when I joined volleyball, tennis, and
What was the dynamic with you and your parents from the love standpoint? Like, I know you said like affection and all these things, but what do you think that caused in you?
I think it just brought me a lot of security. My dad, I would say he has always been affectionate. I mean, he still is. But growing up, it was like very loving, but very strict.
Yeah, that was
It was like hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's like one hand I'm loving you, but the other one I'm whooping you.
Yeah.
You know? I wasn't really a bad child. Like, honestly, I would just get punished for waking up late and making my mom go late to work. You know? And my dad would work. At one point, he had 3 jobs. So
wow.
He would leave at 6 a.m. at the house, and I wouldn't see him all day.
Right.
You know? I wouldn't see him until the weekends when I was little. But then once I hit high school, my dad retired.
That's when you saw him a whole lot.
That's when I started seeing him a whole lot. And it was such a shift for me that I was like...
Yeah, because you went from not seeing him at all, being that strict, dad that he was, to then seeing him all the time.
Yeah.
And still being strict, right?
Yeah. So it was like... And then my mom has always been the tender, loving... She never hit me. She never
corrected you.
Corrected me.
Yeah, to this day, she's just a softie.
She's a softie.
We see that all day, every day with our kids. Like,
yeah. She's a total opposite. But she would
Would you say you had your mom wrapped around your finger in some ways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. But I think my dad too, though.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
To a certain degree.
Okay.
It was just weird.
Yeah.
It was just like, don't get on my dad's wrong side.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Looking back now, like, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change the way I grew up. I wouldn't change nothing.
Yeah. Well, we're like, because I know that your dad was working, 3 jobs and you wouldn't see him all day at all. Do you feel like you missed him during, like, at any point during this time? Or like, how was that? Like, how did that affect you? How did
I
you
don't think so. I think...
Because that was normal to you, right?
Yeah.
It was normal for you not to see him. So it's kind of like, I can't miss something I didn't have.
Not that I didn't see him fully. I would see him at one point every day. So his night shift, he'll have a break. And that break, because he works so close, he will come home and have dinner. And then that's when we will all have dinner.
Okay.
And then he will go back to work till like midnight.
Yeah. But there was never any lack. Like, you always had a roof over your head.
Yeah.
You guys never really got like eviction notices.
No, thank God. Like,
you always had food.
Yeah.
So the necessities.
My parents were very hard workers. My mom, for years, she was a house cleaner.
Yeah.
For different houses. And I remember even going little with her. And I would, especially in the summer when I was in school, that's when I would go.
Yeah. So she would take you with her to the different houses that she needed to clean.
Yeah, because I was so little, I couldn't stay home alone.
Right.
So she'll take me with her.
And she couldn't afford a babysitter.
Right. So I would just go and just sit there. And because I was such a good girl, I would just sit there.
Yeah.
Or I would just follow her, and help her or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny because that's kind of like how Nathan is, I feel. Right.
Yeah.
Our son, if that was the case, he would be I'll get entertained with any little thing.
Yeah.
And just hang out.
He's easy.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's crazy. And then your dad finally retired and from the school system, right? He was working for schools.
He was a janitor.
He was a janitor in school. Yeah. So government retirement thing. Yeah. So to this day, that's pretty much like
what they live by.
What they live off of and all of that. So, I mean, I'm excited because he's turning 80 years old. We're going to be taking him to Punta Cana. That was one of your biggest dreams to take him. Because he was always asking for that.
Yeah, he was always like, oh, I would love to visit Punta Cana. I've never been. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh.
We got to make it happen.
I was like, I got to go.
And I remember when you told me that, you told me that my dad keeps saying this and you mentioned it a couple of times. And then I remember when you was like, I really feel that we should do this.
Yeah.
This was a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I said, let's do it. Because, I mean, not everybody makes it to 80. It's a big deal.
No, for sure. And I think it's like, it's a way of also like not showing him because he sees it already, but it's like a way like God has blessed us to a certain degree that we're able to do this.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, why not?
Right.
You know, so
It'll mean a lot for him to go with
I'm
the
already getting
grandkids.
emotional.
Yeah. It's gonna get real out here, guys. You're gonna be seeing some tears and all that. But I'm excited for that because 80 years old is not a. I know that we've been going through like milestones. Like you're with your dad, especially because he's so much older. It's like I just want him to meet his first grandkid. Right?
Oh my God, yeah.
And then
I remember that.
Right, and it's like, oh, we're pregnant. If he could just make it till he meets the second
one. Yeah.
You know, and then now it's like, okay, if we could just go on a vacation to like a destination he's been wanting to go forever to, and be able to do it with the grandkids, like, you know, so thank God has, you know, he's allowed us to have these experiences, and you know, next month we're gonna go.
I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, my dad had an open heart surgery 2019, so it was very scary. I remember, like, it was literally, he went in to get a pap smear, like 2 weeks before our Europe trip.
Yeah.
And from there, they told him, no, you have to go to the hospital because next day you have to get an open heart surgery. If not, you're going to die. Like, they caught it on time. I was able to fly out it was like a whole week before the Europe trip. Mind you, it's a trip that we were both of us taking, first time going to Europe.
Yeah.
It was like
our first major
trip
before having kids.
That was like my desire. I flew out there because we were already living in Charlotte when this happened. And, you know, I stayed with him in the hospital. The day of the surgery happened. And then it was like probably 2-3 days after is when our date of flying out would be, which was going to be from Miami. And
it was all tentative, on hold. Like, hey, if this thing goes south, we are not going anywhere. I remember
telling you, it's like, if things go wrong with my dad, like, I'm not going.
Right.
Like, in my mind was already like, I'm not going. Like, screw the trip. But then after the surgery happened, everything, you know, my dad was good and he was already home from the surgery.
Crazy.
And he was like, no, go.
You're good. Yeah.
I'm good. And I remember just messaging them all the time.
Yeah. And then, you know, it's crazy that just speaks to like how God works too, because I remember in that trip, we were 8 months into our business.
Yes.
We were only 8 months into it. And the reason I remember is because I remember keeping track of our like revenue. And during that trip was the first time that we weren't really hands-on in the business.
Yeah. So it was scary.
Yeah. And then during that trip is when we hit our first like $100,000.
I remember. We were in Paris.
We were in Paris. And so that was, you know, that was crazy, like roller coaster of a ride for those couple of weeks. Yeah. So I guess let me share a little bit of my upbringing a little bit. So my parents got divorced when I was really young, 2 years old or something. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Not a lot of people know, but I was raised between Dominican Republic and Miami, you know, going back and forth for like 10 years or something like that. So I grew up with knowing both languages, but mostly lived my childhood was in Dominican Republic with my grandparents, while my mom was mostly trying to figure things out in Miami and build a foundation so that she could finally bring my brother and I. So it's just to both of us, my brother and I. We grew up in, I would say, a middle class for Dominican Republic, which is, I guess, like lower class. I wouldn't say lower class, but not borderline poor.
Yeah, like you still had food and a roof.
Yeah, we still had the necessities. We never lacked any roof over our head. It just wasn't abundance. It wasn't abundance. Like one of the major things that I could recall is that we would I remember getting super excited. My brother and I would be watching TV or something in the living room, and my grandma would bring, you remember those thermoses that had these bottle caps on them that it was a cup at the same time, like you just pour it. So she would bring us those little cups with like Coke or like juice or something, and we would just get super excited over something like that, right? So just to give a little bit of perspective of, you know, we didn't have everything, you know, as we were growing up. But like you said, like I wouldn't take it back, because those experiences, seeing poverty, you know, firsthand, not necessarily from us because we had everything we needed, but being in such close proximity to poverty and seeing how in a third world country like Dominican Republic, you know, how kids, you know, some of them were running around without shoes. Like it's, you get to see the reality of it. But also jumping from that to Miami, when we would come visit and my mom, and we would stay with her, and at some periods of time, we would able to see like, oh crap, like the United States is where I want to be.
So much nicer.
Yeah, like we have a central AC and
no fans.
Yeah, a bunch of different things that you're like, dude, you get to see what life could be like.
Yeah.
And I remember dreading that time of growing up in DR, being away from my mom. We missed her. Number one, we felt to a certain degree, especially my brother, because he was older. He kind of felt a little bit maybe of like abandonment, like what's going on, trying to figure out and navigate all of that stuff. And I didn't grow up like you did, where it's like affection was a thing. Mm-hmm. It was more so like we lived in a house where at any given moment, there would be literally like 10 people living under the same roof. Like my uncle, my aunt, my grandparents,
your cousins,
my cousins, which will be at any point maybe 2 or 3 of them, my brother. So it would be like a big house full of people, which you can't really navigate affection time and all of that. It's really hard to see that. Growing up, I was always, this like kid that was always trying to hustle for like making money somehow, like doing little jobs, doing little things to make a little bit of money or something. And that's when I realized, at one point, lending my grandma. I had,
I was going to say that. I was like, you have a story about that. Like
I had saved up some money from, I don't know what, maybe money that my mom gave me or something like that. And I remember my first ever business transaction where I made money was lending some money to my grandma. Mind you, like we're talking about probably, I was maybe 7, 8 years old at that point. I lent my grandma some money, and then I charged her interest for it. And I don't remember the details of how much interest or anything like that, but I was like, oh man, okay, so I can make money on that. Like my first transaction had nothing to do with trading my time for money.
Did anyone teach you that?
No, it was just innately in me for whatever the reason. It's like, I know people want this money. How can I get more of it? And how can I make it to where it's something that somebody wants and they'll be willing to give me more once they get more? I don't know how that really came about, but it was like embedded in me from it was already in me. It's not something that I learned. So I remember when the first computers came out, Compaq, and it was these huge computers. I was like, man, I need one of those so I can do things, so I can make money. It's like, dude, you're like 10, 13 or whatever at that point. So that was that. Grew up with my grandparents, divorced parents, navigating the situation between my dad, which is, he's not really in the picture much at this point either. And I guess I'll open up and as far as like how that dynamic really worked on later episodes, but really that was really it. So from a love standpoint, I got the love from my mom, but she was working. We finally moved to Miami when I was a freshman in high school, and we were there to stay. Prior to that, middle school, kindergarten, all that stuff was pretty much done in Dominican Republic, a little bit here in Miami as well at some point. Freshman year, started high school, brand new thing. It's like, I know English, I know Spanish, but they put me in a class that was like, you remember ESE classes? Yeah. There's like special needs or whatever. They really just didn't know what to do with me. This is how whack freaking the education system is. They didn't know what to do with me. They thought I was ESOL, but I knew English. So I was like, okay, I don't know. We don't know where to put them. Let's just put them here. And I was in a classroom full of kids that had actual special needs. Like you had kids there with Down syndrome. You had kids there with a bunch of different types of special needs. And I think that they qualified me or classified me as having like a learning disability. And I guess to a certain degree, I think that's still true. However, I didn't knowing, it's crazy because I felt like I was taking advantage of the system because everything that we did was way easier than the other kids in regular classes. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to coast this. I'm not going to rat myself out. It's like, why am I here? Right?
It's easy.
Yeah, it's easy.
And if I pass, like I'm out.
Exactly. I'll get through this. It's fine. So, but I remember at the same time feeling like, I know I don't belong in this room, you know? It's one of those things where like the system was failing me.
But do you feel like in those years, you were having like FOMO from the other kids that were in the regular classes?
Absolutely.
And stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Because I would interact with, like my friends were mostly from the kids that were in the regular classes. Because during lunch, it's a free-for-all, right? You can interact with whoever you want. And I was always hanging out with kids that were in the regular classes, but we never had classes together.
Right.
They were always having their own classes and all of that. So for sure, I had FOMO because I wanted to be with my friends all the time. Yeah. Not to say that I didn't make friends also within the ESE classes.
Yeah, but it was harder because
it was different, right?
Yeah.
when I started to see that, I'm like, bro, I feel like now in hindsight, the education system failed me because they didn't know what to do with me. And I was an outside of the box thinker.
Where did they put your brother?
He was in regular classes. I think that I was a learner who was lazy mentally, or I still am. If it's not something that I'm interested in, I just don't, like, I half-ass it, right? Like I was all throughout school, I was pretty much a C student.
I mean, same here. Well, my little story is different, but yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. Your story, and you can share it. But what I wanted to mention with that is that at the end of the day, like, the school system put me in a box, and I could have refined to be something bigger if, you know, my parents maybe, or my mom was more attentive and pushing through on saying, hey, no, he's not, he does not special needs. He just thinks outside whatever it is.
You never told her?
No, because again, I didn't want to wrap myself out. I wanted to get the easy
way out.
Yeah, the easy grades and go through it. To this day, it's like, unless it's something that I'm really interested in, I'll just do whatever is needed to get through it. Yeah, that came about. Then I started going to the cash flow side of things, got my first job at Walgreens. I remember begging my mom to get this job because I wanted to be able to, you know, buy Taco Bell or, you know, buy food whenever I wanted without having to ask my mom. At that time, I had hair, so I wanted to get my own haircuts and not have to wait for my mom to say, hey, it's time to get a haircut. Like, I wanted to be presentable, buy myself little clothes or whatever. And at that point, I think I was maybe a sophomore in high school, maybe. Or maybe still freshman, I don't remember. And that was my very first job. And I got promoted inside of Walgreens from, like, being a clerk. I remember having my little vest and stuff. And I got promoted into, like, the pharmacy, right? Oh, nice. As a whatever age I was. But I was young. Yeah.
That wasn't illegal?
No,
it's
I guess
drugs.
Not. I guess not. Like, maybe I was already 18 or something. I don't remember.
What the heck?
But yeah, I got promoted to that, where I started still making a little bit more per hour. I want to say maybe it was like $13 an hour back then. It was a while.
It was a lot, yeah.
So that was my first and last job that I just got paid on for my time.
For your hour, per hour.
Yeah. Every job after that was commission. You know, base plus commission. I went into, I remember, Tiger Direct, and before that, Circuit City, which was a competitor for Best Buy. A lot of people, shout out to all the people that remember Circuit City. There, I learned how to make money for my efforts. That's when I was first introduced to, like, sales. That was my first real, like, interaction with full-blown sales, because at that point I was in the TV department, entertainment, and I was selling these new Samsung and Sony LCD plasma TVs that were like $5, $6, $7 grand. And I was selling those things, and I got pretty good at it. And then I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like, I know what it is to get paid for my time. Now I know what it is to get paid for my efforts. So if I can really, like, get good at sales, my checks are going to be ridiculous. By that point, you know, I only lasted in Walgreens maybe a couple months, not even a full year. I never really stayed in a job for really long until, like, my very last real retail job or corporate America job. I remember doing that, but I always had a side hustle too. So I was doing network marketing. You remember? I was doing network marketing at the same time, a couple of times, and always just trying to make more money, make something of myself, do something better, right? Yeah. Doing different things to figure it out, because that's really what drove me. It's like starting something new, being good at it, excelling at it. That's really what led me to what we're at today. Kind of like that. I was very willing to take risks. To this day, I'm not very risk averse. I don't mind taking risks as long as they're calculated. Most people freak out at the type of risks that I take. Like maybe sometimes you. As
you were saying it, I was remembering, like, I literally have, like, a vivid picture of, like, our first apartment, and you working in the dining table and me by, like, our bedroom door. Yeah. And it was like just me watching you work, like me getting home from my job, because there was a time period when we were trying to make one of the businesses work. So you quit your 9 to 5. Yeah. So we were just living off of my job for you to be able to put all your effort and the savings that we had for that business. I think it was for the car wash business. I remember standing there, like, by our bedroom door outside, looking at you, and I'm like, Lord, like, I'm standing here, I'm supporting him as much as possible. Like, it is scary as heck, because it's like you see the efforts, you see the sacrifices. Why isn't nothing like really taking off? Right. And it was just one of those prayers that I constantly kept on, like, God, like something needs to pull through, you know, like when I met you, like it was already granted, you had a vision, you know, whatever it was going to be on, something was going to stick and be successful. At that time, we just didn't know
what it was.
What it was.
We're just throwing spaghetti on the wall.
Yeah.
Trying to see what happens.
Literally. And I was just on your side, like
supportive,
supporting
Day
you.
one.
Just hoping and praying, like, Lord, give them the right path to go, and, you know, the right people, the right business, the strategies, whatever it is. To, you know, make something successful.
One of the ways that we first interacted, like when we were still friends, I remember to this day, like I literally, if I close my eyes, I can see it. It's like I started a clothing line for within the church, and I was trying to promote it. And then there was some sort of like youth event or something like that I had a little tent. And I was trying to, you know, sell the shirts that I had printed and all these things. And you came like, hey, yeah, I'll come. And you started helping with selling them there. I'm like, I think that was the first time that I like really noticed you, not from a relationship but like, man, this girl is like dope. Like she's helping me out. She barely knows me. You know, like she's so willing. And it's almost like if you were getting paid.
Because I remember it's like you said, okay, this percentage or 100%, I don't remember, of the
proceeds would go to the church.
Would go to the tickets that we were selling for the youth. You know, so I was like, we need this, you know? So I was like, okay, like no one's going to help him. I'm going to help him. Like I'm going to do it because we need to sell this. You know? So I remember the tent too.
Thank you for that, babe. Like, I don't know if I'm pretty sure I thanked you for that, but you know, that's really what, you know, planted that seed, I guess, that transpired into.
It was like a domino effect
from that point, really, for sure, because I was like, dude, this is what I would want. Maybe subconsciously, I didn't think about it in that moment, but subconsciously I was like, this is what I need in my life: a helpmate, somebody who is down for the vision, someone who's literally shooting with you in the gym, and you've been nothing but that since then. So thank you for that, baby girl.
I think it's just, I mean, I guess seeing my mom always being supportive to my dad, you know, with his passion has always been like preaching and stuff. She's always been supportive to be there and go with him, you know, wherever he was going to go preach. You got me? And just seeing the support that he would have at home of like, she had the house taken care of. She had the food on the table. And all of that stuff. Like, and then at that time, like pastor's wife, the support that she was doing in prayer and stuff. So that gave me a lot of incentives. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things in my parents' marriage that I'm like, I want this and I don't want this.
Yeah, you know what to take.
Yeah, you have to learn how to take the good and not the bad. You know, because not every marriage is perfect. Ours is not perfect.
But your mom was an example in that side of being a helpmate, being someone who's supportive, being like whatever you need to make sure that you continue in the path that God has led you to be in. Right. So I always knew, even I would say from little, I always knew I wanted to be that type of wife. You know, that I'm willing to put the work, but you'll just see my support 1000%. And then my biggest take is like, I really had to believe that you were like a hustler, you know, a go-getter with a vision. You know, not you just didn't want to follow some like guy that didn't have a vision or
no, it's that it didn't attract me. It just wouldn't attract me. So I think also, I guess subconsciously, going back to the whole clothing line in the tent, it's like you hustle to make this clothing line happen. You designed them, you made them, you know, you did all of this. Like, okay, you work for it. So it's like, okay, if he's doing this, like he can do anything. And that was always my like turn off or turn on, like when looking at a guy. It's like, if you're a go-getter, if you say your yes is a yes and no's are no's.
That was a deciding factor for you.
It was huge. Obviously, besides the fact of loving Jesus, having a relationship with him, you know, being
it was a non-negotiable, one of the non-negotiables.
yes,
right?
obviously, yes.
Yeah. No, I get that. So I think that also something to like kind of fast forward into what we're at now is like you're still that person. Like when we started this business, the Airbnb business, when we moved here, that was a whole process just to move from Miami, leave your family, leave our friends, leave our church, all of that stuff. You know, we basically let everything go to start something fresh that at the end of the day kind of God put in my heart first, and then we came together to pray about.
Yeah.
And then that just shows like the testament of the type of woman that you are, because you were like, okay, yeah, like let's entertain this idea and let's pray about it. And then once the yes was the yes, and we came and we saw Charlotte and all these things, and we moved out here, you were that same person that was there selling shirts with me, because you were like, let's do whatever we need to do.
Just in a
completely different format.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves in the sense of saying the story of that process of moving, or like getting to know each other in the beginning, how we...
I don't know
Should we talk
why,
about that?
but I feel like we should talk about the season that we had, that we felt like it was probably from God, when we really thought that we were going to have an insurance office, because we were really head on.
Yeah, we're pretty set on...
You know, on that, and we were trusting God and stuff. And then it's just talking a little more on that, because that was a business.
Yeah.
And that could have been a successful business.
Yeah.
But...
God did.
Yeah. Like... a lot of stuff wouldn't have happened.
So yeah, let's touch on that. The very last job that I had, we were both in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
You got me into it because you were in the insurance industry before me, and you kind of brought this into my like life. And it's like, okay, how can I make more money doing sales? And that was it. I got into Allstate Insurance, and I was with this agent for like 5 years, I think 4 or 5 years altogether.
Yeah.
So the goal at some point, like I went up in the corporate ladder when it came to that agency. Like I started as a salesperson, then became a sales leader, and then a sales manager. And then next thing you know, I'm like the office manager. And then next thing you know, the same agent opens a new agency.
And you were genuinely enjoying it.
Yeah,
like,
I was loving it.
You were loving the whole structure.
Because it was sales and managing and leading people and all of that. So I was
and you had a good group of people too, like in the office that you were leading.
100%. And then I had the benefit of being able to hire people that I thought were good, like friends and all of that.
Yeah.
So I got that leadership experience through that. And then the agent bought this new agency, or started this new agency, and I was the one basically running it from the very beginning by myself, to hiring someone in the front, to hiring more salespeople, and all these different things. And then came the opportunity where that same agency he opened it to sell it, like eventually sell it. He really just wanted to open an agency to have an exit and cash out a couple $1 million or whatever, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million.
Yeah.
So long story.
With the book.
Yeah, with the book of business. So long story short, we were going to end up buying that.
He offered it.
Yeah, he offered. He took us out to dinner.
Yeah.
We
oh my
met,
God, I remember. Yes.
Yeah, we met with him and his wife, because his wife was actually the agency owner technically.
We were like, what, a year in?
To our marriage?
Yeah, like year and a half.
Something like that. I wouldn't know.
We were already married, yeah.
Yeah, we were for sure married. But that was the goal, that we were going to buy this agency from them, and then that was going to be our career path. That was going to be our future.
No, mind you, and remember that I was in the insurance industry for probably like
2 years before that, at least.
I want to say 3 years before that. And the thing is that when Ivan and I were dating, I was in State Farm.
Right.
And then as soon as we were getting married, I think the idea already surged. Like it was already in the air, right? The week of our wedding, my last week in State Farm, because when we were get back from our honeymoon, I was starting Allstate with the same agent.
Yep.
Because
at the original
it would
agency.
Eventually go into our own agency.
Yeah.
Like that was the whole goal.
Yeah, we were already getting groomed to take over the agency.
Right.
So you were working at that agency, at the main one that I worked at originally, and I was at the other agency that we were starting up that would eventually be ours.
Right.
And that was our like path.
Yeah.
Like if anybody asked at that point, what is Ivan going to do in the future, or Jenny, like, oh, they're going to be Allstate agency owners. But
I think it was just a matter like what hold us back, because I think at that time we were feeling like peaceful about it, like okay, we really do see this for us.
Yeah.
We will make it successful, whatever. But I think it was all about like, we just didn't have the finances. Like, how do we get a loan or something?
Yeah.
Because to be able to pay at least a good chunk
Down
of it.
payment or
because
whatever.
he trusted us to a degree where he knew that we would pay him.
Honestly, like that was a blessing if
Yeah.
it would have gone through, because he saw the work ethic, he saw the
Yeah.
hunger in us.
Yeah.
He saw that I basically built that agency
Yeah.
from zero to, I think it was at one point $3.3 million book of business. We didn't know like any type of financing. We were just
Nothing.
trusting that he would guide us in the right
Yeah.
direction to do
Yeah.
whatever we needed to do.
Yeah. And then it was literally in that time that I feel like it started to like just lag.
Yeah.
Not lag long, but lag enough where the idea of Airbnb started for you.
Yep.
And you just started to do the research, local research,
Yep.
like within Miami.
So I'll say the story on how that really even got sparked in me, because at this whole time I'm working at Allstate, but I'm
Yeah.
always doing something on the
Yeah.
side, and that something on that side during most of that season was network marketing. And at that time, one of my mentors, Alfred Nixon, I remember going to his presentation, and a young dude, younger than me, making a ton of money doing network marketing. I'm like, dude, maybe, I don't know. I just like to not have all of my eggs in one
Yeah.
basket. And I remember him saying in one of the presentations, I've heard him speak so many different times already, but this one time he mentioned that, network marketing makes the most millionaires aside from real estate. And then he just went about, his whole presentation. This was, mind you, towards the beginning of his presentation. But I was just so fixated on just that one sentence. I'm like, yo, if network marketing is number 2, what am I doing here? I need to be in the number 1. I need to increase my odds of becoming a millionaire. Like that's where my mind went. And then that's where like that planted that seed with real estate. I was like, dude, I for sure need to be in the real estate space in some capacity. But where am I? Like how can I do this if I don't have a ton of money? We were brought up knowing and thinking that we needed to save a ton of money, a ton of capital in order to buy your property and then eventually burr it out, like invest into it, refinance, all these things. So I'm like, how do I get into this game, man? And then at the time, I remember seeing this Airbnb. We had stayed at a couple Airbnbs already. And every time we walked into an Airbnb, I'm like, bro, I wonder if I could do this. Like, I wonder if I can get a property and people just rent it out.
Yeah.
Like I remember one of our first Airbnbs we went to or stayed at was in Orlando with our friends.
Oh my God.
Or was it Tampa? Tampa. And it was horrible.
It was horrible.
Horrible experience. You got leaks and all these different things.
Oh my God.
But that also like kind of say, okay, wait, there's Airbnb thing. And then my feed started coming up, or I like started researching. Long story short, sped up to like 3 months before we moved to Charlotte. I really did a deep dive into like the Airbnb game and rental arbitrage.
Yeah, but you're missing a piece. We looked for properties in Miami, but to purchase.
Right. I did forget about that.
We were eventually trying to see if we can start it in Miami.
Yeah.
But to purchase.
We were just hitting.
It was just
so hard.
Yeah, something was just not giving. You know, it was, and now looking at it back, it was like just God saying like, it's not going to be
It's not here.
It's not here. You're going to do it, but it's not here.
Yeah.
But I even remember exactly one of the properties that we went to.
Yeah.
On 152 to look at. It was like
Kendall.
a condo. Yeah.
K-Town.
and Kendall, a condo that we were like, oh, but it was like a little thing, and it was like
apartment.
almost $500,000. I'm like,
Yeah.
stupid.
Crazy. No, and then that you add that with the the spark in me to say, I don't know if I want to raise a family here.
All at the same time. Like, so this is all happening.
Yeah, it's like God is bringing realizations into our lives that we never
Yeah.
knew existed.
Yeah.
We were really, because
I
to
mean,
this day, if we had bought the Allstate agency, we would be
still
there.
be there. Yeah.
Right now.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. Like life would have been completely different.
Right.
1000%.
1000%.
But I think also you had the first time you ever told me like, oh, look, you need to start praying because I really feel that Miami is not the place that we're going to raise our kids. A couple months passed.
What was
from
your
that.
initial reaction?
I was like, I rebuke you. And I started praying. I was like, Lord, you need to take this idea away from Ivan because I am not moving out of Miami. This is not happening. Like, I've never pictured myself outside of Miami. And then I thought you forgot about it. I thought you forgot. And I thought that God answered my prayer. As in like, oh, that idea like doesn't exist. And then you brought it up again. I'm like, you're kidding. I'm like, and then that's when I told you, I was like, no, I don't see myself.
Yep.
And you're like, just open, be open to it.
Yeah,
let's
like
just
pray about
go. Yeah, but like, it's like, let's just be open. I'm not saying that we are.
Yep.
You told me I'm not saying that we are, but let's just have an open
Mind about it.
Let's go on a trip. Let's go to Texas, and we went to Texas and looked at houses. I mean, either way, looking at homes is so much fun.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind that.
Right.
But then at the same time, I was like, okay, do I see myself here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a different lens because you can go and visit a place.
Yeah.
And visit it without looking at it a place that, okay, can I potentially live here? Like, what does my day-to-day look like?
Yeah.
Right? Because we've visited many places, but you never look at it as like, okay, how can I coexist in this environment? I remember that we were going to actually pull the trigger on moving to El Paso, remember?
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the things, because for us, one of the main things before we chose a place to move to is like, where are we going to congregate? Where are we going to, what church were we going to go to?
Yeah.
And at the time, some people would say El Paso, like, okay, I see Dallas and Houston and Austin.
Yeah.
Okay, but El Paso?
Yeah. So weird.
The reason is because we had a church there that we had connected with, that we knew the pastors and we were connected with and all that stuff. And we went and we saw houses and we we're like, dude, these houses are way cheaper.
This isn't our budget.
Yeah, it's like $150,000 house, where in Miami, that same exact house would be $400,000.
Brand new.
As a new construction. I was like, dude, this might be it for real.
Yeah.
And then, God said it wasn't it in his own way. It's like, okay, where else? Like, where else will we congregate? And that's when we thought about Elevation Church.
You thought about it.
Yeah. I was like, well, what about Pastor Stephen's church?
Where's Pastor Stephen's church?
Yeah, like where's
Elevation
is it?
at?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
And we go on Google and find out that's here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, we should just do a road trip one day.
Just check it out.
Check it out. Just for the heck of it. We'll make a trip out of it, a weekend trip out of it. Yeah. Sure enough, one Friday.
Oh my God, sorry. Pause. But the Texas one, we came back and it was like maybe a month or two. No, not that much. Maybe like within a couple weeks after the trip. I was so nervous to tell you what I was feeling of that trip.
Wasn't it?
Like that wasn't it. Yeah. I was not nervous as in like you would get mad. No. I was just nervous that we're going to be in
confrontation about it. Yeah.
That I was like, oh my God. Because then I didn't want you to think that I was saying no because I don't want to move.
Yeah.
You get me? Mm-hmm. So when I was like, babe, like, look, I'm just telling you.
Remember? Like I told you, it was like, you know what? Like we went to Texas and I feel like that ain't it. And you were like, oh my God. Bro, thank God, because me either. I don't think that's it. Like I know that we were looking at this house.
Such a relief.
And it was such a nice house and all these things. And then very shortly after, something happened with the church that we were connected with and the church that we were at in Miami, because they were, and there's like, dude, God saved us from that. It's like he pulled us. Like he literally went like this. Nope. And that's where it is. So back to that weekend trip. After work, we drive up to Charlotte.
5 o'clock Friday.
Yeah.
You pick me up.
We go right after work. Everything was packed already. Pick you up.
My God.
We're driving 10 hours to Charlotte, North Carolina for the very first time.
Drive.
By then, you had already set up like tours, different properties in Charlotte.
I had reached out to a local realtor.
Yep. And then we got there super late or early on Saturday.
Like 4 in the morning?
Something like crazy like that.
Yeah.
4 in the morning, Saturday morning. And we were meeting with the realtor like at 10?
10.
Or something like that.
We had to push it back because it was going to be like 9.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, sorry, but we got here really early this morning.
Yeah.
Like.
We need a little bit of rest.
Yeah.
And then
I think it was like 11, 12 when we met with him.
Something like that. And then we did the whole tours of the different properties that we looked at, that he had already vetted for us.
Yeah.
And all these
there
things.
was one, I had just one. I had given him one that I had found online.
Yep.
I was like, I would like to see this one as well.
New construction.
Yeah.
And all good. And then that same day we went to, we met with old friends of mine from high school that they had moved to Charlotte maybe a year prior to that or something like that. To get the scoop, we had dinner with them, which was awesome. They gave us like insight. Oh my God, we love it here and this and that. They didn't have any kids at that time yet either. So, but they left for similar reasons. So it was like perfect insight for us.
Yeah.
Similar age, everything. The idea was that on Sunday we would go to church and, check it out. And then from church, just go straight back home. So Sunday came and we went to church and, we received, and it was an awesome message. It's time to drive back. And we got in the car and we started driving back. And then you pretty much said something that set the trajectory for the rest of, that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a couple hours in. I was.
No, it wasn't even that long into it.
No, like an hour or two.
I felt like
I
we
think
started
so.
talking about it right away. And
You
then
think
that's
so?
when, yeah, like it
Because
was
I
barely.
was like, and I got nervous too, because I just obviously like if you know the Holy Spirit when He talks to you, it's so like clear. It's so much like it's so clear.
Yeah.
There's no confusion.
Yeah.
When God speaks to you, right? So when I felt that, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, and I was trying to bring the confusion myself. Like, how can I put it? Like, no, this is just no.
My emotions.
Yeah. But then again, it was just so peaceful that I was like, okay, that's just my nerves just trying to get in the way, but this is God.
Yeah.
This is God.
So what did you
literally
feel?
Say, I was like, so I remember being in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember that picture. And I was looking at them, I was like, babe, exactly the same way that I felt when God told me that you were my husband is the same way I'm feeling right now about Charlotte. So it was like very like
this is our house, like home.
this is home.
Yep.
Like Charlotte is home.
Yeah. And it's crazy because in hindsight also, like you've always been that I've always looked to you as the like final stamp of approval in many things. Whereas like, I feel like doing this and God will put certain things in my heart, but we don't really move forward on major things until I feel like you've already thought it through. You've prayed about it. God has spoken to you about that thing.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Which
sure.
I appreciate.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a very important thing in a relationship.
Yeah. 100%.
Because it's like, yeah, I understand you're the head of the household. You'd have the final say, but you value my say
Yep.
as well.
100%.
You get me? Like, you don't make the final decision. Like, you can make the final decision whether I agree with it or not, but at least let me know beforehand.
Yeah.
And
like
let me
input.
share my input. And then there's been times where I'm like, I'm not going to give you my input. Let me pray about it first.
Yeah.
Because the input, if I give you an input right now, it's going to be out of my flesh. It's
Right.
going to be what I think,
Yeah.
you know? So,
So yeah, I've always come to you. You're like my prophet. It's like literally like I'll always come to you for decisions, big or small.
yeah.
Like literally, like should I post this or not?
Yeah.
Should we move to a different state?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
at
think it's
that-
important.
Yeah, 100%. And then I was like, okay, say less. We're putting
Yeah,
an offer in this
you-
house.
That was the first, I remember you saying that. Like, once I said that, it's like, okay, we'll put an offer in.
Yep.
We'll
it's
speak to the realtor.
so we ended up putting like the earnest money on that house that
On the one house that I had seen online.
the main one that you saw and that we really liked, and
Yeah.
that was new construction. We just saw the model home, and the rest is pretty much history.
Yeah.
We ended up moving late 2018.
Yeah.
Started a new job at an all-state agency. Mind you, we had to cut ties with our agent here there in
Yeah.
Miami, which that was a little bit rocky. He was kind of confused and stuff like that.
Yeah. He was depending on us.
In a way, right?
Yeah.
Which was tough. And then of course that wasn't the only loss, like
Yeah.
our families, our church and all of that.
Right.
Now, something that I want to touch on before because this pod is getting pretty long, before we go, something to touch on is how we made the decision, which has been a theme in our lives, in our relationship really, because we made the decision, you and I, based on our convictions, our prayer life and all of that stuff, but nobody knew for a long time that we have already made the decision to move.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, prior to us even going to Charlotte or anything like that, we had already told our parents and we had already told our leaders, our mentors,
From church.
that we don't see ourselves living in Miami forever.
Yeah.
Like at least a year
To
before.
put it in prayer,
Yeah.
to help us in prayer.
Right.
For God to guide us in what direction to go,
Yes.
whether it was to stay or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like not even your best friend knew that we were moving until like it was
Yeah.
literally, we already put the money down
Yeah.
into the house and all of that
It
stuff.
was like no going back.
And that's been a theme because the same thing
Yeah.
happened when we started dating,
Yeah.
where I felt to tell you, hey, we should not involve people into
This
this season of us getting to know each other.
Yeah.
The reason for that I felt, it's crazy because I was somewhat of a new believer at the time.
Yeah.
Like I've always believed in God and all that stuff at that time, but I was not, I think it was just like the wisdom of God in me, because it just came out of nowhere just to tell
Like an
you,
idea.
yeah, like we shouldn't involve people in this season. We should really like seek God ourselves.
Yeah.
That way we don't have outside opinions,
Yeah.
and we could really rely on listening to the voice of God and our family, our like direct family, our parents, our mentors.
It was really hard. That first one.
Yeah.
It was really hard because, I mean, as a girl, you're so used to sharing
With your
these
girlfriends.
things with your girlfriends, your best friends. And it's like, oh my goodness, like, who do I talk to? And like, obviously, like, that's your key of going to God.
Yeah.
Talk to God, and see what he thinks versus what your best friend thinks,
Yeah.
because obviously anyone that starts, like, if there's two people that start, mingling and getting to know each other, and their friends starting to notice that, they know of it, like,
Changes
immediately everyone like shifts their view on both of you and shares their unsolicited advice, give their opinions, like,
Yep.
no one asked for it.
Yeah.
You know?
There's certain things that, and to this day, that's probably one of the most prevalent or most given advice from us to new couples and people trying to date and all these things, is to really try to keep it to yourselves for a while. Obviously, let people, like, be accountable with someone.
Accountable,
like,
for
not
sure.
just you, for like, but tell your parents, tell people that are going to give you unbiased opinions and all that stuff. But really try to minimize the amount of opinion from other people that have nothing to do with the relationship.
And I feel like it was such a big deal when you first told me, like, hey, look, we're not going to tell this to anyone. I guess that was another confirmation for me that I knew, as you were telling me, I felt your like authority, like your like
Leadership.
I don't know. Like, it was like, okay, I can listen to you. Because that was another thing for me as a girl. Like, if you were going to tell me something like to do, like, I needed to feel it like in my core.
Right.
Like, I can respect that. I can go with what you say.
Yeah.
And not feel like, I can step all over you, or I have you around my finger and I'll do whatever I want, no matter what you tell me. Like, because that's how I analyze guys so much like that. Just with that. If you tell me something, I would kind of feel like, and analyze it,
like, find the weight behind it too.
Like, how much weight do you carry that I will listen to you? And
then also, I think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, when I presented that idea, I explained why. It wasn't
And
just
I
me like,
understood.
hey, we're not going to tell anybody. I don't want you to like, I wasn't bossy about it.
No, you weren't.
Like,
and
it was
like, I immediately processed it and I was like, you know what, that makes sense. It makes sense. Is it gonna be easy? No. It completely makes sense. And it was just a matter of trusting this, whatever it was at that stage. Trusting, like, you know what, if he said that, it's because, probably God put it in him. And it's just a better way for us to get to know each other better, genuinely, without other voices.
And that's another thing you just said, like, that was probably God telling him. Or, like, the fact that we respect when we feel that God told us something, even if it contradicts what the other person feels. That's super important. Just recently I said, listen, I feel compelled to post something, to voice my opinion on something. I spent like literally 2 hours of my flight putting this thing together or whatever. And I ran it by you and you just told me, I feel that it's not the right time. And then I was willing, and I told you, like, hey, this is how I feel. I want you to read it. But if you feel that it's not, like, you feel it's off, or you feel that it's not the right timing or whatever, like, I won't post it. Like, I won't do it. And sure enough, that's what you felt.
And it was just something that I immediately, like, I read it. It wasn't like a bad,
Yeah, you just didn't feel
didn't feel that it was the time for it.
Yeah. So going back to, like, that pattern of, what we did when we started in our relationship, kept keeping it to ourselves. We did the exact same thing with when we decided to move. I remember to this day when you told your best friend, Isa.
You were there.
Yeah, I was there when you told her that we were moving. She was not having it at all. She was mad.
Yeah.
So much so that she, like, started getting emotional and walked away. Like, I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
But I think that she respected also. I'm probably putting words in her mouth, but now in hindsight, we'll have her on the pod. And Mike, still best friends of ours.
Yeah.
To this day, I feel like they probably feel like, that was wise for them to do that. To some degree.
Now looking at this time,
yeah,
they all say now,
Yeah.
It's like you left at the perfect time.
Yep.
You
And
left
we didn't
Miami.
know. And the crazy thing is that we had a lot of naysayers
Oh my gosh, yeah.
that we didn't even know about.
Yeah, we didn't.
Right?
I feel like God protected us from that.
And
Because-
that stems from us not making it an open thing for
Yes.
everyone to give opinion about.
But I feel like if I would have known that throughout that, especially in that beginning state, the beginning couple months after moving, or even a couple months before moving, if
would
I
have
would have
affected
known
you.
that, it would have affected me.
Your decision.
100%.
Yeah.
It would have affected
Yeah.
me. You know, but I feel like God like put me in a bubble.
Yeah, he protected
You know?
us there. Yeah,
Because
for sure.
then once we started hearing it, I was already here like,
It's too late.
I'm good. Like,
Yeah, it's too late now.
you know, yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy because God will protect us from things as long as we allow him to. He will protect us from things that will hinder us reaching our purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like, if you see a pattern on this whole conversation, like directly or indirectly, you can tell that God has always been centered, you know, in our decisions.
Yeah.
Whether it's in our relationship, whether it's in our businesses, whether it's having that faith to put in that risk on a business that never gave in. It's a matter of like, how much are we trusting God?
Yeah.
You know, and it's
And how much are we putting to work in our faith?
Exactly. Because like people say, yeah, but I have faith. But if you don't do anything about it, how faith doesn't work that way.
No. The Bible
You
says
know?
faith without works is dead.
Right.
So if you have the faith to move in a certain direction, it's going to take you taking the steps to get to that place.
Yeah.
And have the faith that God will guide you into that, getting to that destination.
It's like literally walking blindfold. You're blindfolded.
Yeah.
You're walking in a direction, just trusting that God is guiding you.
Yeah.
You don't know what the outcome is going to be, but you're just, that faith is what's holding you.
100%.
You know? So it's something that people, I feel like just the whole faith thing is like, it's taken so lightly. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, I'll just put it in God's hands. Like, are you really?
Yeah.
Like, are you really putting it in God's hands, or are you just saying that just to say it?
No, it's
You know?
it's literally putting it in God's hands. Like, think about it physically. You put something in God's hands, meaning you're surrendering to
Yeah.
whatever God wants to do. However, if it's something that is also like a fleshly desire as well,
Yeah.
you need to start moving in the direction that will open up the possibility for God to move through there.
Right.
Because our God is a gentleman. Like,
Yeah.
he won't force himself. That's why he has free will, right? So he gives us free will in choosing him as God or our God or not. Like,
Yeah.
he gives us free will to operate in however we
How
want.
much access you want to give him?
Yeah. So by the same token, in the acts of faith that we take,
Yeah.
he gives us free will to move in the direction that he's opened the door
Right.
for us, or deviate and go somewhere else,
Yeah.
or what have you. So I think that's a key for everyone to, like, if you're making God the priority and he has
Yeah.
a literal input in your decisions, that you also take the actions to allow that to happen.
I think it's also so important that as much as, let's say, you desire, let's say, one thing, but then you hear the Holy Spirit tell you something else, and having to, how you said, surrender that desire of yours and going towards what you heard God
Yep.
tell you to do. Like, that's where that big difference is. And I
Yeah.
think that's what has helped us, knowing when to surrender
Yeah.
and what to surrender, and then just going based on what we feel that the Holy Spirit is guiding us to.
Yeah, and the perfect example to that was surrendering the idea of becoming agency owners for Allstate.
Yeah, because we
For
were
something-
pumped. We were
yeah.
so pumped for it.
Yeah.
And it was like
we were
it was
groomed for it too.
It was like a solid success. Like,
Yeah.
we knew that was just like, once we have it, we're good.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna be financially well. We're gonna have a solid success, solid career.
Yeah,
for
that was
both
the
of
that
us.
was the
It was
easy,
the
safe route.
safe route.
And then all of a
100%.
sudden, God puts in us to move
Yeah.
somewhere where we're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
In essence.
Yeah, completely different city.
Yeah.
And no one we know, nothing.
Nothing.
Like, nothing. So
Just us.
yeah.
And then that was a cool season too, because we depended just on us
Yeah.
and God at that time
Yeah, for sure.
for a whole year. We
Yeah.
didn't make any friends. We didn't feel the need to find
Yeah.
friends.
I think that can be another
Episode for
Yeah.
sure. But that was amazing.
Yeah.
I think that for maybe the next pod that we do, just you and I, we'll talk about that transition.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely talk about it a little bit more in detail. But I know this one was a little bit long-winded. Is there anything that you wanted to close out with or say before?
No. It's just, I'm
Excited.
happy. Yeah. I'm excited to start this
Yeah.
journey. I think it's something that has been in us to, how we said in the beginning, like it's been in our spirits to do.
Yep.
The idea of it came about, I guess, in the perfect time.
Yeah.
And it's just, hopefully God gives us
The grace
and gives us the right words for whoever listens to be able to receive and learn from our lessons and our mistakes and, what we've gone through.
For sure. And I think that it's also like, even though it's you and I and the mic, and we'll have guests that have mics and stuff, but everybody who's watching and listening, this is also like a safe place to open discussions about different things that we're going to uncover pertaining to love and cash flow, making money, dynamic of the family, of marriage, work-life balance and all those things. But, we're going to do this for a year. We're committing. You and I came together and we said, you know what, we're going to do this for a year. And if, a year from now, we notice that it's not really worth it, not many lives are being transformed, or, we don't feel fulfillment in it or whatever, then at that point we could decide whether or not we're going to continue. But we're going to stick to it regardless of what the views say, regardless of whether we get canceled or if that's even a thing. Regardless,
we can't get canceled.
Yeah, we can't get canceled. But regardless of what the outcome is, we're going to stick to this for at least a year. We're committed to it. And we're going to pump out, one a week at least. And we'll have a lot of exciting other things that we have in the works that we can't really share yet. But I'm super excited for this season. I think that this is actually a prophecy coming to pass from, one of the prophets that gave us a word before she passed away, Prophet Kathy Leshner. I think is opening some doors that I'm just excited for this season. And with that, I think that we should just close in prayer for this first episode, if you don't mind. Yeah,
let's do it.
I think that Holy Spirit of God, we invite you into this place. We invite you into every household that's represented in this moment, that is listening, that is watching. Father, that you may bless every decision that is made, that comes and stems from these conversations that take place. We honor you in this podcast every single time. We declare, Father God, that it is your words that are reaching the airways and getting to the exact ears that need to listen what has or will be spoken in these episodes. Lord God, we surrender our desires in this moment, and we ask, Lord God, that you are the tool that is used during these episodes for us to navigate, and that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for tuning in, guys.
Follow, like, subscribe.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Share.
We're new to this stuff. We're newbies. So yeah, follow, like, subscribe, share with someone that you feel is going to be blessed by
stories.
this. Yeah. Thank you for the support in advance. We really appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. And I'm excited to see what God does in this time. As always, I'll see you at the top. Let's go.
Bye.